And we are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is Joe DeLeone. Good morning, sir. I just realized I'm not wearing a hat, but oh well.
Yeah, this is the first time you're not wearing a hat. Must have been a long night that you forgot to put the hat on. I mean, it's been a long whole day and a half.
Well, you know what kind of night I had, so
right.
It's
But
not. I'm going to leave it there.
Yeah, on top of all that, though, there is also messiness that we are going to have to recap for the next hour.
So today is like it has been for so long on this freaking show. We have to talk about conference realignment. At least, Joe, we have come to the finality of this.
Yes.
Okay. Now we're to the point where, okay, it's pretty much all done with. Now, the only thing that we didn't talk about, and I guess we have to do it now, even the college football playoff is going to have to pivot, right? Because you had the Power 5 conference champion winners would be in the playoff and would get the seed. Well, now what do? You know, if you're the college football playoff, I mean, now they have to pivot. So in case you missed it, Utah, Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado are all going to the Big 12. Oregon and Washington now are leaving the Pac-12 and going to the Big 10. I saw this from Elks inside the comments. I thought this was pretty funny. He said, and to think that the Ohio State mascot, Brutus, broke the news 2 weeks ago on Instagram.
See, I wonder if was that post actually that or were they trying
low-level trolling, bro. That is serious trolling.
You think they authorized letting the stupid mascot post that?
Of all the teams that they could have posted, why did they post Oregon?
That's a good point, but the thing that's random to me is why was the duck all the way there taking that picture?
Because why was that picture was more than likely taken. Remember when Ohio State and Oregon played, and Oregon went into Columbus and clapped them cheeks? That's probably when that picture was taken.
That's a really good point. That's so stupid. If that is what the meaning behind that post was, I can't believe that is what's not sparked all this, but was an omen for further events.
Remember Wednesday I came out on the show and said Dan Lanning Monday. I came on the show Monday and said this.
Yeah.
I said Dan Lanning did not sign that extension if he did not know where Oregon was going. Did I not say that? I'm going to double down on that. I'm going to double down on that again. As kids would say in elementary school, Nana boo boo, told you so. I mean, Joe, listen, we look at coaches as these finite dudes and beans. They're football coaches. They're not politicians, rocket scientists. They're not Elon Musk. They're football dudes. They're not the smartest. They're not just, half of the Big Ten coaches ate crayons as kids. Are you going to tell me that Brett Bielema didn't eat crayons as a kid? Because you know that dude is a tough-nosed, iron-biting head coach. You mean to tell me that Sam Pittman doesn't enjoy eating hunting buns? Come on.
Yeah, no,
that was assigned to me Monday when we came out here on this show and said he's not his agent, which I believe is Richie Sexton, is not going to let him sign that if he did not know. Now we'll break all this down. How did we get here? How will the teams do? We have to then now pivot back to Florida State, okay, because they're trying to go to J.P. Morgan Chase and get a loan to get out of the ACC, which, again, is the stupidest thing that they can do. It is by far the Joe, you're taking out a loan at 26.5%. You're losing money. You're losing money. So
they shouldn't be taking. Well, that's kind of telling of how upset that they are. But
you can be upset, but don't be upset while making business deals. You got to be rational thinking.
That irrational thinking might lead to somebody purchasing control of Florida State, which is something that we're going to talk about. But
I don't think they buy universities. I think they buy conferences.
yeah, there was a really interesting article on CBS Sports that I had sent you of an outside media investment group that was
Saudi Arabia. Let's call it what it is.
Yes. Not all the people involved are from Saudi Arabia, but that's usually how this works. You need people from the U.S.
The business holding is in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to be Saudi Arabian to your business being in Saudi Arabia, brother.
Right, but the article, which I don't know what the title is off the top of my head. I implore people to go to CBS Sports to go check out the article because it went unrecognized it went unrecognized because of all of the stuff being talked about. But there is a possibility that this investment group either purchases a conference or tries to build their own, which I think it's worth exploring that, maybe once the Pac-12 is dead, that's what they were waiting for. They knew if they lurked in the shadows and waited for this to happen, that they could start doing then the necessary groundwork. And maybe that first piece is Florida State. I don't know. There's a lot that can happen. There is a lot.
I will tell you, if I'm the Pac-12, okay, we'll get into this. If I'm the Pac-12, I'm going to Saudi Arabia and saying, buy it. Buy it.
Man, that's not worth very much right now. 4 teams. Like, how much
they
is
can
that
go
worth?
And buy other teams, and it will be their way in. Joe, it's their way in. You're making an investment to get into the club.
Well, let me ask you this, though. If you're a member of the investment group, does it behoove you to buy into a conference that just collapsed, or would you rather buy the ACC and have choice of the best teams?
Well, I'm going to use this analogy. Okay, stay with me.
Mm-hmm.
Multiple people that I know and deal with on a daily basis, they're in real estate. And let me tell you how they conquer a city block. You ready? Yeah. They go and buy the crappiest building that nobody wants, and they buy it. Okay? When they buy that crappy building, they go and inquire to the guy next door, being like, hey, man, I just bought this. What are you doing with that? And they continue to go down the strip and start buying things. I use that real estate analogy to say, at the end of it, then you have the entire city. Okay? You would have to make the investment into the Pac-12 and go and get other teams to get your foot in the door for the long investment down the long haul, right? That would be the pitch that I would sell, okay? And not having a hat on the show is really bothering me. But it's just how I think it could be done. Now, you don't have the market, you don't have the teams, but you're getting your foot in the door to be in the building. So we'll talk about all this. Let's not get completely ahead of ourselves, okay? I see some comments in the chat, guys, in reference to AYS. I don't have any more news or anything to put on there. I'll put it in there when I do have more. But nevertheless, let's talk about this conference realignment. I got to be real with you, Joe. At some point, okay, let me tell you what this all is coming down to. You ready?
Yeah.
This is all coming down to one man being appointed a commissioner.
Oh, we're getting even closer. Closer by the day.
So I don't care if it's Josh Pate. I don't care if it's a whole roll of Play-Doh. Somebody with a pulse has to be running college football. The first person you need to call is Greg Sankey.
Absolutely.
Bottom line.
Absolutely.
And you know what? This is what you do. You do the same mother bleeping thing that NFL does, is that everybody's got a piece of the pie. Every TV network has a piece of the pie. ESPN will have a major chunk of it, okay? That's just how it's going to roll if Greg Sankey's in there. I hate to say this. I completely hate to say this, but we're at a time now where college football needs a commissioner, and that's where I'm going to stay. That's where I'm going to stay. So, all right, let's get rolling. Everybody do us a favor, though, by hitting the like and share to all of those social media groups, share to all of those social media pages. If you're listening to us on YouTube, like, subscribe, notification bell. If you're watching us on Fubo TV, I'm sorry I scared you this early in the morning with not wearing a hat. Wherever you listen to podcasts, rate, review, and subscribe. All right, let's talk about our good friends over at BetOnline. I hate this so much. This is going to be my least favorite episode. I'm just going to tell you. We're back next. Don't go anywhere. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, events with the first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews for all the news for each league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, college sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information for live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head on over to BetOnline today and use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50, that's BELIEVE50, BLEAV 50, to receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's betonline.ag, betonline.ag. We're back. You're going to get your ass beat week 2. All right. They are. Hey, let me can I get to a little bit of football very quickly?
Yes.
Football. Okay. Here's some things I'm hearing. You're not going to like this.
Oh no.
I think Alabama quarterback situation might not be as bad as we thought.
I think that you like that less than I do. I'm fine with I think it's better for football if they have a good quarterback situation, but you don't want that because they're one of your biggest rivals. What do you mean by that, though? What do you mean by it might not be as bad?
I have been told by multiple sources. That's way too long. I got to shorten that up. I've been told by
you should make it longer, but sorry, continue.
Okay, well, I just don't think that they're as bad as some believe that they will. I think that they absolutely clobber Texas in week 2. Second thing, buddy, I don't know if Quinn Ewers is going to be it.
Why? Are you hearing that he's struggling, or are you just saying that?
I'm hearing it's, he hasn't progressed.
But he got a haircut, Blake. I don't know what's wrong with my eyes. It's like my right eye has been bugging the crap out of me. He cut his hair though, Blake. Maybe we should be taking him seriously.
I'm going to say this. I think USC's in real trouble defensively. I think they're in real trouble. Bear Alexander is out with an injury. Okay. That's problems. That's serious problems. Last thing I will say about football related, I am going to be very. Oh, by the way, guess who called plays all week at Texas A&M?
Petrino. Bobby Petrino.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, it shouldn't be surprising, and that should have been happening this whole time.
But it's surprising though, like, right?
It is what it isn't.
Okay. I'm really interested about Oklahoma's front seven. I heard Shizite has gotten Rizite.
Now, Blake, you would have known about this sooner if you listened to me.
Let's talk about.
Dude, I talked about their defensive line. The Sam McCullough man was the setup for them going from an underrated group to a really good group, dude. The Sam McCullough is going to pop off this year. He's the best guy on that group, and he was one of the best transfer portal edge rushers in this past class. I'm telling you, man, I tried to say something. You didn't want to listen.
Oh, and by the way, Drew Aller is going to be a problem. He's going to be a problem.
Have we really determined that from some training camp practices? I will say he's going up against a good defense in practice. So,
Penn State source, you ready? Okay, let me get to my notes because I wrote all these teams down when I made some phone calls. Drew Aller went 16 of 21 with 3 touchdowns and 7-on-7.
Wait, in 7-on-7?
Yeah, I mean, I get it, but hear me out on this. And everybody, so listen, in training camps, okay, everybody's like, oh, well, there's no pass rush. There's no pass rush. You're right. There is no pass rush. Are you going to sit here and tell me that he's never going to have a clean pocket? Like, are you going to sit here? So, okay.
Yes.
Okay. So
I hate conceding this, but I
okay.
get
So
what you're
shut your mouth.
saying.
As a former O lineman, I promise you, he's going to have. Joe, here's the funny thing. If you run 40 passing plays or have 40 passing attempts and get sacked 5 times, okay, so 45 attempts, that means that 90% of the time he had somewhat of a clean enough pocket to make a throw. Okay, calm down.
As somebody who used to stand and watch 7-on-7 during practice, I can tell you that it doesn't really mean that much. How does he do during? I'm not going to put any stock in a guy until I see them on the field against an opponent, a difficult opponent.
You mean like you did with the Ohio State quarterback situation? Nevertheless, look, Joe, we have been to too many practices in our lives to know that when a quarterback goes out there on 7-on-7 and lights a unit up, that there's something to be said about it. People are gonna make fun of that. Joe, I'm telling you, people can make fun of me about it all they want to, but you know what I said? 3.5. No, that'd be 2020, 2021, 2022. So 4 years ago now, in 2019, there was a guy by the name of Burrow that I came out here and was bullish about, saying he was lighting everybody up on 7-on-7. And everybody's like, oh, well, Mr. Blake. I came out the next year and said there was this guy named Mac Jones that was lighting people up. Oh, Mr. Blake. And then just so happens last year I came out and said that I heard the same thing about Stetson Bennett, and everybody said he can't throw more than 15 yards. That was the real take from fans. So again, there's something to be said. Let's talk about and pivot to realignment.
All right.
You love it so much. Go ahead.
No. Stop. Don't act like I'm sitting here loving all this. It's tiresome. It was ridiculous. And I said this on one of our shows this past week, and it's kind of like a blur of even which show it was. But the constant chair swapping was tiring. Like it got to a point where whatever the decision was going to be, it needed to have been made. And I think it was fully epitomized when on Thursday night, I pulled up the Washington Board of Regents meeting and had it on in the background while I was doing some other things, waiting for them to start talking about what their decision was. And they kept pushing it back. They were in an executive session for over an hour, and they kept pushing back the time that it was supposed to end. It was 9:30, then it was 10 o'clock, then it was 10:15, then it was 10:25, 10:35. And then they concluded it by saying, we haven't made a decision. We're going to end the meeting right now. And they just ended it abruptly. That to me is how this whole process is operated. A lot of posturing, a lot of quiet conversations, and then like, oh, what should we do? What should we do? And then nothing freaking happening. I'm glad that we finally have the damn result. I'm tired of, I was getting tired of hearing, well, this might happen. This might happen. We now know the result, and we knew what the result inevitably was going to be, which was the complete dismantling of the Pac-12. This is something that had happened over a year ago. The Pac-12 was dead the minute that USC and UCLA left, and they didn't aggressively pivot to go and add 2 other teams. That was the second that the conference was dead. The Big 12 was not afraid to put up their fists and fight and go add quality brands to keep themselves afloat. The Pac-12 did not do any of that. Kliavkoff sat on his ass and waited for whatever stupid reason, and the best that he could do was come to the table with a subscription-based TV deal from Apple TV. That wasn't going to keep them alive. It wasn't.
All right, let me just say this, okay? Because people won't remember this. Joe, they weren't dead when USC and UCLA left. They were dead before, okay?
Yes.
Larry Scott was the worst commissioner in college football's history. Larry Scott was horrendous. Joe, he made TV deals with ESPN, CBS, not CBS, NBC, whoever, to have their conference championship game on a Friday night during the heart of high school state championship games. Okay? Joe, here's the just God's honest truth. Nobody was watching. the hardcore college football fans who are watching. But, Joe, on a Friday night, even though I cover the sport, I'm with my wife and kids because it's the time that I see them. Or I'm out scouting recruits. I don't have time on a Friday night to watch a conference championship game when a state championship game is going on in my own personal state. This is where they started to die. When you had, and this is all chronicalized, this is from Stuart Mandel. This is from Dennis Dodd and others. Joe, they pulled up the TV ratings last night. Did you see this? The TV ratings for the conference championship game last year for Utah versus USC did not get more eyeballs than Baylor versus TCU. And I told you this on Wednesday. Nobody's watching. So the reason why ESPN is not going to go above 30 million, 25 million is because, quite honestly, nobody is watching. That is the problem with the Pac-12. You know what else was a problem for the Pac-12? USC sucking. And Oregon and Utah and these teams not getting to the playoff. Not getting to the playoff killed these teams. You know why? Because teams that make the college football playoff and win it, Joe, 2019 LSU, I'll just give an example, made over $60 million for winning the national championship in the playoff. Not getting there kills you, and it kills your conference, okay? The reason why the SEC is so competitive, Alabama, and why boosters and administrators are so bullish, Georgia is so bullish on paying what they got to do, doing what they got to do, is because they know the money that they will make on the back end. Larry Scott was the reason that the Pac-12 failed. Kolitnikov came in with – you ever seen the movie Jurassic Park?
Yes, I have.
Remember when they're going out to see the dinosaurs and the funny guy with the glasses gets out the car and the dinosaur had just taken a massive dump and it's a big pile of dookie sitting in the middle of a field and goes, that's a big pile of shit. That is what Kolitnikov had, okay? The reason we got here is because you had the SEC being aggressive and going and getting teams along with the Big Ten because they saw the writing on the wall. And you know what else they saw? The money that they were making with the playoff and what ESPN was spending. I hate this for the Pac-12. I hate this for the West Coast. But Pac-12 after dark is dead. It's dead. And the Big 12 is going to have to – you know what the Big 12 is going to do? The first thing that they're going to do is say, hey, you know what? We aren't playing games at midnight. We're not playing games at 11 p.m. We want it to be in Central Standard Time so everybody can watch. And you know what else, Joe, that nobody's made a point about with the Big Ten? And we'll get into this, where teams are going, how they will fare. Do you know that the Big Ten has a CBS deal and Fox deal that teams play at noon? It is an unwritten rule that teams play at noon. Are they going to start playing games at 9 a.m. on the West Coast?
No, there's going to be some level of adjustment. The Oregon and Washington wouldn't have willingly, and also USC and UCLA wouldn't have willingly hopped into this.
Well, CBS is going to do their 2:30 Central Standard Time game no matter what, which is 12:30 Pacific.
I almost do we think that it's just noon local time for wherever the game's played? I mean, if you're going on the road, you're kind of
local
forced.
Time. See, no. They go Central Standard Time. That's how the Big Ten's rolled. Remember Harbaugh made, and I'm sure Elks can tell us in the chat, but it was kind of an unwritten rule. Like teams in the Big Ten were mad because if you remember that they had to play some night games. Remember Ohio State and Michigan had a little bit of, like, dude, like, what are we doing? So bottom line is, I hate it for the Pac-12, over 100 years of success, over 100 years of being a conference. But you didn't pivot, and you couldn't go get teams because you couldn't get a deal done. And I don't blame Kolitnikov or whatever his name is, however you say it. I can't say
Kolitnikov. I'm definitely mispronouncing it, but
okay. I don't think it's on him. Joe, he massively tried to go after a massive market in San Diego, and he couldn't land them because he didn't have a TV deal in place. And the truth is, we say all of this, Joe. You know what? You know who really killed the Pac-12?
Who?
ESPN, CBS, and Fox. That's who killed them. That's who killed them. Joe, not getting a deal done for them killed them. And that's the bottom line because Stone Cold said so.
I mean, one side thing, and I don't want to dive down this, one could argue, and I'm sure that it's on the table, that they could take some sort of legal action, that there was some type of collusion by the TV networks to set them up for this level of failure. It is noon Eastern time. I don't know if they'll actually pursue that, and if they even feel that it's necessary or worth their time and money to try and make some argument that there was collusion to lead to their demise. But I think that
1000% there was collusion.
Yes.
What do we talk? I mean,
I think that stuff was involved. Yes, I think that stuff was certainly a reason, but I disagree that Kliavkoff is not without cause in this. I think him and Larry Scott collectively not having any backgrounds or connections to the college game, both of them they were both equally bad commissioners, because Scott set them up for this. He is the reason why USC and UCLA left, because he came in and he wanted everybody to be on equal footing, and USC was pissed off by that. So they took the first opportunity to dip and find an opportunity to make way more money than everybody else. They even considered, the article that I read, they even considered being an independent because they knew that they could survive on their own, being the independent, the Notre Dame of the West, because they've already got enough rivalries that they could maintain. And a lot of people would be excited to add a USC to their schedule. It would be a huge boost in revenue for teams to add USC to their schedule. Them leaving is Larry Scott's fault. But Kliavkoff to step in, knowing the situation, and to sit on his ass and not be proactive and aggressive is what led to this point here. He came in with the body on the table on life support, and he just watched the thing die. He did nothing.
Joe, if you're on life support, there's no reviving it.
There was a path to reviving this.
The only way that
the
you can
Big 12 did it. If they went and they went, the Big 12.
No, but they had an ESPN deal though. That's the whole point.
Their deal wasn't finalized until after they added Cincinnati, UCF, Houston, and BYU. That all happened around the same time. I don't see why.
No. Their deal,
yes.
Their deal went to 2030. Their deal went to 2030. That is why the Board of Regents had to vote on it.
I want to double check.
Yeah, look it up. But their deal, if I'm not mistaken,
their deal was extended in August of 2022.
Okay, so a year ago, it was already extended before these teams were coming in here officially.
Okay, wait. Here's what it was. In the new deal, their previous deal was going to be done in 2025, and then the new extension kicks in 2025 when all these new teams
that goes to 2030, correct? Yep. Okay.
Yes.
So I agree with what you're saying. I don't believe I can't say the Russian name. You know who I'm talking about.
Kliavkoff.
George. I'm going to call him Vodka on this show, okay? The bottom line is that when he went to ESPN, CBS, NBC, Fox, they said no. They said no. Okay? Like you cannot You cannot convince me that Kliavkoff did not go to go to them and say, we need a TV deal. You can't. And you know what ESPN did?
Wait, but it's possible though again, this is a lot of speculation because we're not in on these conversations, but how hard is it for him to come to the table, talk to those schools, and then come to the table with all of the new TV rights partners and say, we have these schools interested, they're going to join, they're going to come with us? That increases the negotiating power. Sure. Are they not allowed to do that?
But you just read, they already extended the Big 12 before these teams were in. So my point is if you're already extending another conference with Texas and Oklahoma leaving, and it's dire, but you're extending them, okay? Well, why are you extending them? Either one or two things happen. Either you knew that they were going to go get those teams, which is probably more than likely true, or the truth, they have more eyeballs. Like I mentioned earlier, how do you have a Pac-12 conference game between USC and Utah, and Baylor and TCU has more eyeballs on it?
Football in Texas is going to get more attention regardless.
That is my point. That is the point that it all comes down to. Eyeballs and money. So when you unravel all of this and we say, how did all this happen? When you have a conference Joe, if USC beats Utah, they're going to the playoff. Lincoln Riley goes to the playoff in his first year at USC, and you still cannot get enough eyeballs to watch that versus, let's call it what it is from last year, a low-level Baylor team and a TCU team, yes, that would go on to play for the national title. But at that moment, you and I both know when those teams played and it came down to it there at the end, we had no idea if TCU would make the national championship game, because you and I both came on our Saturday show and said, no, you know what it's going to be? It's going to be Michigan and Georgia, or Ohio State and Georgia. That's how it was going to pan out. That was the way that we thought it was going to pan out. You did mention TCU, and I will give you that. But you cannot convince me that ESPN, NBC, Fox didn't look at that and all of them come together and say, guys, they have a conference championship game that they can't get eyeballs on. And one last point. Okay. You know what ESPN, Fox, NBC, CBS, all of them were pivoting to do? Well, you know what? You know who will watch that game? The SEC, the Big Ten. They will watch their conference championship game. They will. And they know that. So then drives up the Joe, it's like being in a business meeting. If you're ESPN and you go to Allstate and you say, we overperformed with the SEC, we overperformed with the Big 12, we overperformed with the ACC, and they come to you and Allstate says, well, you're down 400% in the Pac-12 in viewing. They can't generate more money because it stays the same. And I read an article, I think it was from Brett McMurphy or somebody, who said that ESPN's biggest struggle was that they overperformed in the other conferences, but massively underperformed in the Pac-12, which then lowered advertising dollars. That's
okay. You even said it though, that them positioning and playing their game, a lot of their games were on Friday nights, was stupid. I think that the biggest issue for me, why they weren't attracting more eyeballs, is there was a lack of games that were played in the primetime slot. For me, the Pac-12 had a fantastic opportunity on the West Coast to play a bunch of games in that, a lot of your premier games in that, whatever it is, the 7:00 Eastern, 8:00 Eastern time slot, which is considered to be the Saturday primetime slot. But instead, you're playing a lot of those games a lot later than that. The expectation is like, let's put it later when everybody else can watch it after the big games, which is a horseshit approach. The timing of when the games were played were terrible. They were not properly positioned. I just don't. Again, I really put a lot of this on. I don't think that Kliavkoff was effectively negotiating anything.
Excuse me, this was right. Really Jimmy Satterfield said it was Kansas State and TCU. Thank you, Jimmy. But you still get my point.
Yes, I understand your point that there was a lack of attention that was going towards the games. It's because when they were being played and the lack of
it was Baylor. Hold on. Continue.
No, wait, in the Big 12 championship.
No, it wasn't the Big 12 championship game.
You're talking about that TCU
Baylor
game that was played. That was played the week prior. That's what you're talking about. I actually think though that what's a really interesting like, let's take this back even a few steps further of like what really led to this death. USC being bad, then
Oh, killed them.
leading to recruits like Bryce Young, DJ Uiagalelei, just to name a few, leaving and going and playing on
DJ Stroud, Jane Daniels. I mean, let's continue.
All of those guys left to go play in other conferences. None of them were staying and playing in the West.
Just like how in America people are constantly leaving California now.
Yes.
California's dying, buddy. I mean, in some aspects, not the big business, not the nightlife, not all of that. But the college football version is what I'm trying to say. They're dead.
Well, it's also what's and it's part of the Big Ten was talked about wanting to go after Stanford and Cal, and then now suddenly they're removed from the equation. They don't want to touch that because their attendance, their viewership is declining. It's going down. There is no desire or attraction to football up in the Bay Area. There just isn't. Nobody gives a shit up there.
Well, I remember when LSU played UCLA in the Rose Bowl. Okay, in the Rose Bowl, it was 67% LSU. In the Rose Bowl.
That UCLA is a whole separate animal because like they play, and it's like Miami. They stupidly play their games off location, an hour away from campus. And it's impossible to get to. Pasadena sucks trying to get to. I've tried to go over there before. To go to I went and golfed over near there before, and it takes forever to get over there. That's a whole separate issue. Let me ask you this though.
All right.
Just to kind of move what we're talking about here. What do you think? Where do you think that the other team should go? Like what the hell does?
So
I don't think it matters what Cal and Stanford
knows. Just so everybody knows, that's Stanford, that's Cal, that's Wazoo, and Oregon State. So those are the four teams remaining in the Pac-12.
Yeah.
Well, there is a thought that, I mean, so let me just ask this. Is there any way that the Pac-12 survives?
If they merge with the Mountain West, because what are they going to do right now? If they couldn't attract G5 teams, and if they couldn't get a commitment from SMU, San Diego State, Fresno State, Boise State, like if they couldn't rapidly attract them to join the conference, why would they suddenly be able to do that now? $20 million isn't going to be a significant enough boost to increase and put them in a. No, the FBS. Oh my God. If they couldn't do that when they were a fully formed conference with 10 teams, why the hell would they be able to do it with 4? They're not going to be able to. They just need to go and straight up merge with the Mountain West.
If we're going to talk about playoff, if we're going to talk about conference, they weren't getting there anyway. So you had Oregon, you had Utah, you had Washington, you had USC, UCLA. You weren't getting there anyway. So to get to our next point that we were talking about, how will these teams do? You're going to highly disagree with me, okay? Here's the truth, and you know it. Will a USC maybe make it out once or twice? Maybe. Will a Utah now run the Big 12? Probably. But that's their way to the playoff. But Utah is sitting in such a better situation than anybody else because they're already winning the Pac-12. They're going to get to a playoff, okay? But here's the truth, and you know this to be true. USC is not going to go into the Big Ten and start doing things to teams like Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State and others. They might get through there once. They might. But everybody's like, well, the Pac-12, if they get the Mountain West, they're not going to get to the playoff. Says whom? Because the playoff is now going to be expanded. They're going to get a team in. Yeah. They will get a team in. I promise you they will get it. Joe, Boise State, 1 year will get in to the playoff. More than likely. Somebody's going to get in there. San Diego State, they might get in there. But the bottom line is you weren't getting there to start off with. It comes down to, for me, now that we talk about these other teams going to these other conferences, you still getting your ass whipped. Joe, USC, UCLA, Oregon, whoever, Washington, whoever, they're going to get that ass whipped.
I completely disagree with that. So I think that Utah,
they're already getting that ass whipped.
But Utah benefits the most from this because they are the perfect team to succeed in the Big 12. Regionally, it's not going to be that difficult for them to travel because they're not that far away from Texas, where most of these schools are embedded. I really do think that Utah is going to dominate in the Big 12, and they're already a really well-rounded program. They fit the description of developing low 4 stars and high 3 stars into just really well-rounded football players. That works perfectly in the Big 12. That is how you're going to win Big 12 championships. TCU did it last year off of that model. Utah is going to be able to do exactly that. But I completely disagree on Washington and Oregon failing to succeed in the Big 10. I look at the Big 10 is the second best conference right now in college football. But let's be honest with ourselves how it really is. After Michigan and Ohio State, historically over the past decade, it has been extremely average for the remaining teams. Wisconsin,
so
Iowa, but it's not the same level of average. It is.
I
not
know
there are inept offenses, plenty of inept offenses in the Big 10 that there are just a lot of really average teams. Minnesota,
what do you think Les Miles
Illinois.
Was? What do you think Jimbo is?
Those teams, those mid-tier, wait. Those mid-tier teams in the Big 10 are not comparable to the SEC. I can't believe we're flipping who's saying this.
I get that, but what I'm saying is that the teams on top of the conferences, Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia, Alabama, LSU.
Yeah,
those are your Power 5 right now. Okay,
yes.
Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay. If you ain't beating them now, how am I supposed to believe that you're going to waltz in here and beat them again?
Wait, Oregon beat Ohio State 2 years ago.
Sure.
That's my whole point. That's my whole.
Hold on. But historically, Oregon, they won one game. Congratulations. You won one game.
I completely disagree with that. Oregon has
then
finished.
Why aren't they making the playoffs?
They just got a brand new head coach. What do you mean? They're one of the first teams in the playoff. Washington's bad.
They were at the first ever playoff.
Washington and Oregon have more playoff appearances than USC. Washington and Oregon have more playoff appearances than USC.
Thank you for making my point.
I'm not making your point. My point is that they are okay. Wait. Can I finish what I was trying to say? The Big 10 is 18 teams now. For them to finish in that top 6, both of these teams, when they've been historically in the top 3 of the Pac-12 over the past decade and a half, I can perfectly see them entering the Big 10 and finishing in that top 6, and at least one of them consistently making the playoff every single year.
So 4 teams from the Big 10 aren't getting into the playoff.
You don't think now, after all the expansion, after all those teams being added, that they can't get 4 teams in? I absolutely think that they can.
Because as Ross Dellinger reported, that the college football playoff is going to pivot. And like they said, they do the expansion is to not have 4 teams into the college football playoff from one conference.
How does that make sense, though? There's less conferences.
No, there's one less conference, which technically they're not out yet. My point is, yeah, cute, you can get to a playoff. But I'm talking about they're not going to go in there and run the Big 10. Ohio State and Michigan will.
They obviously are the only 2 teams that run the Big 10 right now, but I don't think that the gap is that far, especially because we need to look at what Washington, I will concede, is not as high up in this conversation. I'm really talking about Oregon right now. Oregon has built an SEC-esque roster over there in Oregon. Dan Lanning has built a very talented team with his transfer portal actions and his recruiting rankings. He is out recruiting Ohio State and Michigan right now. And I think he's a better coach than Ryan Day. No one would want to admit that.
They're not out recruiting Michigan right now.
They finished with a top 10 class
right now. Rankings don't mean anything for these past players. Rankings mean nothing about these past players, Joe.
They have the bodies, they have the athletes, they have the 5-star recruits, they have the transfer portal players to attract and bring to Oregon.
Who are they taking out?
Who are they knocking off?
Yeah, who are they knocking off?
Wait. When you say who knocking off,
well, let me pivot.
Context?
Let me pivot.
Context? Okay.
Well, all right. So let me pivot.
Okay.
You're trying to convince me that in an 18-team conference, that they're going to be able to be more competitive in the Big Ten now, but when Mario's crystal ball couldn't.
He's an overrated coach. He's not a good coach.
Dan Lanning had the better roster than Oregon State last year.
He lost. He's in his first year as a head coach. LSU the better roster than Texas A&M, and they lost to Texas A&M. Like what?
That is my point. Thank you. That is my point. When you go to a conference that week in, week out is tougher than what you were facing in the Pac-12, you're going to have to start. So, Joe, this is what they will face now in a month. Ohio State, Michigan, USC, let's just say Washington. The likelihood of a team's history of going 4-0 and 3-1 in that stretch is not likely.
It's
because the last one of their month historically used to be Wazoo, Oregon State, Cal, Stanford.
Also, we're kind of assuming that they have to play all 4 of those teams. We're assuming we don't know what their scheduling is going to
name them because the likelihood
they're going to kick the shit out. They could kick the shit out of Northwestern and Rutgers and so Minnesota.
Else. But if you're going to sit here and convince me when you got so the SEC, okay, we're already seeing that model, Joe. We've already seen the model. When you got Texas and Oklahoma, the schedule's out, right? The schedule is out. Texas has to play in a month. Georgia, who else was it? Ole Miss. I forget the teams in order, but you remember that we came on this show and said Texas and Oklahoma just got screwed. Did we not?
There's a difference between Texas and Oregon. Texas has not been recently successful, nearly as recently successful, not even close to recently successful as Oregon. Oregon has kicked butt in their conference for multiple seasons.
If you're not winning the Pac-12 consistently, you're not kicking shit. The only thing you're kicking.
It's not like they're winning it's not like they're playing in the American. They were still playing tough teams.
Joe, I'm just going to say this one last time on this platform.
Okay.
USC last year, Oregon in years past, when a team like Florida beats the Pac-12 champion,
we're not talking about what they're doing against SEC teams. I'm sitting here talking about how they're going to do in the Big Ten.
Scored 3 points against Georgia. 3.
In Dan Lanning's first ever game as a head coach.
Okay. Joe, I will buy you all the steak dinners that you want. Oregon is not waltzing their ass into the Big Ten and going to consistently be a dominant program like Ohio State, Michigan.
I don't know how we measure that, but I really think that they step right in and they
championships, because the thing that you play for the most is championships.
Yeah. The Big Ten has lacked competition outside of those two teams.
It is for someone like myself who covers the SEC mostly to say, okay, well, a team can't win in the Pac-12, whether Dan Lanning as of right now and with Mario Cristobal, and Utah is the team consistently coming out. USC couldn't do it with a better roster, and you know it. With the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, they could not slow down Utah. You come out here and say USC can be overrated defensively, but all of a sudden an SEC 6-7 team beats that champion, and Oregon cannot dominate. The truth is, Joe, they should have been dominating for much longer. because they had more stability, and you know that, and we're getting their asses kicked every single year in that championship game.
I'm just confused by the way that you're measuring success, that like if they don't win their conference every single year, they're automatically not a good team. Like that doesn't.
No, they're not. Because if you're a team like Oregon and you're saying that they're going to be more competitive every single week when you play Penn State, Oregon, Ohio State, whoever the freaking Rudy Poo, it's a USC, whoever it's going to be, when you got to go through that month, the likelihood that they come out of that month with a winning record has not shown in their history. Joe, they would have to go to the Big Ten and do something that they have not been doing. An upset win versus Ohio State means nothing to me when you can't run your own conference.
As bad as the Pac-12 was over in terms of viewership, they still had more parity at the top than the Big Ten. They were playing more difficult opponents on their schedule than the Big Ten.
Oh, dear Lord.
Wait, in Oregon having to play Washington, Utah, USC. Yes, I think that there are more difficult opponents at the top of the Pac. There was at the Pac-12. It's been 2 teams. The only reason why Michigan and Ohio State have dominated
teams in the SEC too. But who is your favorite team? Who's your favorite team in the Big Ten right now? It's Illinois, right?
No, it's not. I said that
they're favored to win the West. Let me ask you this question. Let me ask you this question. Is there any Pac-12 team that Oregon will face that has the defensive front of Illinois?
Washington. Absolutely. Washington. ZTF, Braylon Trice are 2 of the better defensive ends in all of college football and have not been recognized as such. I just don't know how you can't look at what they've done.
And when the right head coach look at them not dominating the pack.
When the right coach is at Oregon, they're a really good program. They have Nike money in their back pocket.
All right, let's flip this really quickly. That money, let me tell you something. You ready? Here's the cold hard truth. Money don't mean shit when that ball is kicked off.
Does when you got SEC bodies on your roster. It does matter when you got
and Oregon's not there yet. They had the most complete roster in the Pac-12. They do not have the most complete roster in college football. They're not even in the top 7. They're not.
We'll see how it plays out. I don't agree with. I don't agree with that. I don't mean to abruptly pivot us. I do want to talk about this Florida State stuff because like this is.
You have my blood pressure up.
I'm trying to save your blood pressure.
It is at a whopping 88 right now.
Oh, it's not that bad. Mine's usually that high.
People are always like, when I'm yelling, people are always like, Blake, you're going to have a stroke. And so I got this Fitbit, okay, to say,
yeah,
look, it's 88. You know what I mean? I can't move my wrist like that. I don't know how to do that. All right. Want to talk about Florida State?
Yeah. Let's talk about the Florida State stuff.
In case you missed it, Florida State, I guess, Joe, I don't know if we just say this reportedly, has met with JP Morgan Chase, the massive bank, and wants to take out a loan to buy themselves out of the ACC. I got to be real with you. This is what I talked about on Wednesday, and I got pushback from you on this. Florida State is notorious for administrative wise making horrendous decisions. Horrendous. Willie Taggart, the buyout. We talked about Mike Norvell not getting fired because they didn't want to have another buyout on their hands. Remember, they wanted Dion. Remember when their fan base, when he went and got Travis Hunter, and everybody's like, we should have just hired Dion because they weren't having success. There is a history at Florida State administrative-wise not doing the right thing. They signed that deal to 2036. So, Joe, I said it was $75 million. Now it's reported, okay, now that we have somewhat real numbers, that they would owe the ACC $125 million. Now,
that is insane that they're willing to pay that.
What's his stupid name? Hold on. So Kendall Rogers of D1 Baseball. Now, this is a baseball guy, but he posted this, or he quote tweeted it. It was actually from Abin Novi Williams. Okay, now I'm going to put this up on screen. This is teams' debt, okay, which debt really isn't a big thing because when you look at debt, all these top teams have debt, right? Florida State would not only shoot up that, now Cal being at $439 million is ridiculous.
That's insane.
Okay, what their argument is, okay, is that they would still not be in the top 10. Joe, they would leapfrog teams like Ohio State, Colorado State, Texas, LSU, Oklahoma, Clemson, Colorado, Cincinnati, Oregon, etc. Okay? So I know it's tough to see those numbers, and you would just have to go look at Abin Novi Williams.
Stupid question. How is this debt accumulated? Is it from facility? Where do these numbers come from?
These numbers come from like debt that they accumulate in recruiting or like borrow money from banks, because when you make coaching changes, right, you have to have cash on hand before the Board of Regents can let you fire a coach. So I'll give an example. When Ed Orgeron was fired, LSU had to go and borrow money to have money on hand before they could fire him. Okay. That's how a lot of, now I don't know Cal said that the reason that they have that much debt is because they academically or sports wise couldn't continue to fund for Title IX. Okay. But they don't really care because their endowment is ridiculous. Cal Berkeley's got a crap load of money. If they could just stroke it with one check, if they wanted all their debt to be erased, it's not that big of a deal. But, Joe, we're talking about over $100 million that Florida State in debt would have to go into at a 26.5% rate of interest. They would only be making interest payments. I think it's a dumb move. Now, Greg Sankey came out and said that he's not expanding. Do I believe him? No.
Right, I don't. That's a load of crap. All the commissioners that said that they weren't expanding and then all this happened.
Well, here's the thing with Sankey. When he was asked about Texas and Oklahoma, he never once said that he's not expanding. He said that we are. So I went back and looked at this. Greg Sankey never once said that he was not adding Oklahoma and Texas. He said we're always looking to make the conference better. Yesterday, he came out and said, we aren't expanding. We're going to do what we do. So why did he say that? So why was he like that with Oklahoma and Texas and not like that with Florida State? Now, let me tell you this. Greg Sankey doesn't work. He works for the presidents of these universities in the SEC. I don't know if they want Florida State.
I'm not buying Florida State to the Big Ten. That has been what is, I don't even think it's really been reported on. It's just been floated out there. It's on the ether, on Twitter. It's been what has been thrown out there. I don't really buy that. The regionality of the Big Ten is a cluster F. And I think that adding Florida State into the mix makes it even more complicated. If they add one team, then they're at an odd number. So like, who's the other team that you go and grab? Do you try and pursue Clemson as that other team? I feel like if they're going to jump ship and if they're going to move, it's going to be the SEC, or they're using this, as we talked about on the last show, as a negotiating ploy to get more money out of the ACC.
It's a good point. Maybe. I don't think they're getting more money from the ACC.
You don't think that they wouldn't restructure?
No.
Then they're out. Well, they're going elsewhere if that's the case.
Well, if they're going elsewhere, then good for them.
I am intrigued though by what is theoretically.
Joe, that's a dumb business deal. That's a very dumb business deal.
It is, but I think that what I think is going to push this over and what is going to push this further is what was described as outside investment a hedge fund, private equity, putting money into this to pay for that deal. I don't even know what that equity package looks like. Like, how do you?
Well, it would be their facilities.
I guess it's just like, how do you technically invest into a college football program? That's what's really obscure to me.
Well, they're not
because
investing.
this has never been done.
They're not investing. They're taking out a loan
from a private equity firm.
From a private equity firm and JP Morgan Chase. What they use as collateral is facilities. So if Florida State doesn't pay, then JP Morgan Chase takes their facilities.
Which I don't think it would ever.
It's not, because Florida State, I mean, universities have endowments. They don't technically have. Here's the thing. They don't technically have to take out the loan. Florida State could stroke a check right now from a university standpoint with their endowment and get out. They could.
Somehow, yes.
Well, I mean, let's just look up their endowment right quick. Hold on. Let me look this up. Let's go to our handy dandy Google Florida.
I'm not going to pretend to understand the complexities of.
Well, it's just basically, Joe, how much the university has on hand at any given moment.
Yeah.
Their endowment and total assets is $953 million.
So I'm sure that they don't want to spend money that's
75 or 100 million to get out of there, but if they could, they could. If they wanted to, they could.
The thing that again, the whole Florida State thing is just such a different, and it's funny that this is all happening at the same time, because like we're watching two completely different things happen, but it's all the same conversation of, the lack of satisfaction with the media deal leads to Pac-12 dissolvement and reshaping of these other conferences. But then on the other side, we've got a team that is a historically recognizable brand, that is a national championship winning team, especially in the past 2 decades, has been a really good football program, and it has some of the best teams in college football history. Some of the best athletes in college football history have played at Florida State, and they're locked into a TV deal for an egregious amount of money in a conference that isn't that bad, but is not that competitive. And they're so disenfranchised that they're trying to find a way out of it. I want to know what the underlying motivation is for this. Like, that's what's.
Joe, we confirmed on the last show that the ACC teams are, and this is, I can't believe I got to say this, are only making $8 to $11 million less than the SEC.
Right. It's not as much of a gap as the Pac-12.
It's not as much of a gap. Okay. So we confirmed that on last show. Okay. So just hear me out. Then why are you so pissed? Because again, and I will continue to say this, the ACC did not make you pay Willie Taggart. I mean, Joe, they're complaining that they don't have enough resources and money. Well, number one, where are your boosters? Number two, it's not anybody's fault but your own that you paid Willie Taggart. Okay. And I mean, why do you want out, Joe? If you want out that bad where you're willing to spend $100 million to leave, let's just say the SEC deal is for $50 million a year. Okay. Well, that's just gross profit. That's not what you're making net. Net, you're probably making $10 to $12 million. Okay. It doesn't matter. Like you're going to have 10 years where you have to recoup that money and get your money back. So the profit that you make from even an SEC deal to make up for that, you're going to have to pay JP Morgan Chase.
See, Blake, and tell me if I'm wrong here, which I'm sure you will. I don't almost see this as as much financial as an entitlement-based decision. I feel like this is a decision by they don't feel properly recognized. It's almost like a toxic girlfriend. You're like, he's not giving me the attention I deserve, so I'm going to go, flirt with other guys at the bar. Like, that's what it feels like. That they're not satisfied with the way that they've been positioned, with the success that they had in the 2010s to where they have fallen now. They're not willing to admit some of their own failures, which I will concede is against my argument from the last show. I think it's really just an entitlement-based decision. And I'm not saying that Florida State is entitled. That's not what I'm trying to say. They deserve to go to a better conference. They do. But I feel like their motivation is stemming from that.
Florida State leaves, Notre Dame enters.
I hate that so damn much. I hate that so much. Because that's even worse. Look, we've got a lot of new viewers right now, by the way. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm wearing a Notre Dame shirt. I'm a Notre Dame fan. I have wanted them to go to the Big Ten if they're going to pick a conference, because that is going to be the more competitive.
They're not going now.
They're not going.
They had their chance.
If they go to the ACC with no Florida State, that is not worth the value. That is not worth the value. That is absolutely not. That is already, I don't want to join the ACC, but to then join an ACC without Florida State, who has been actually a decently sized rival of Notre Dame, for that to happen, that would be a huge step down for Notre Dame.
I see this comment. Oh man, I can't find it.
Christopher Foote.
Oh, here it is. He said Big Ten conference better than the Athletic or ACC. Is the Big Ten better than the ACC?
Yes. Yes, without a doubt.
As a whole, is it? Because
you're talking about other sports.
We're talking about football. We're talking about football.
Mm-hmm.
I think what he's really trying to ask here from a all-around standpoint is the Big Ten better? Because here's another thing that you got to account for. You got to account for basketball. You got to account for baseball and others and other sports. Okay.
Yes.
That's what I think he's trying to say. Or okay, he says it isn't.
By
okay.
the way, I have to acknowledge my man is going to war in the chat for no reason.
Oh, they're going to war, bro. They're at war.
He's saying every team stinks. This is hilarious. I haven't even noticed any of this.
All right, well, bring it up. I don't.
Well, he was like I just saw this comment. Just like Wisconsin sucks. Like this. I commend you, Christopher Foote. I do agree with what you're saying. I mean, from like a football standpoint, no, the Big Ten is massive steps ahead. But basketball, the ACC is slightly better. Baseball, they're like the Big Ten's not good at baseball at all. They're terrible.
I don't know what Florida State's end game is here. I guess they think that they're getting shafted, and good for them. You know, like good for them. Tyson, buddy, you can leave, man. Like conference realignment is a big deal. So let me just say this to anybody in the chat, like Tyson Messer.
He's the only one.
Well, right. But I mean, conference realignment is a big thing, and it's here. Talk SEC what? Like we have multiple shows where you can go and listen to where we talk about the SEC. Go right on ahead.
The massively growing audience that keeps growing every minute on YouTube is here for the realignment talk. So like, here I want
is a massive deal, Joe, because
we have to talk about it.
Well, and look, we talk about football specifically, right? So as we're going down this, we talk about football specifically. Right? Like that's the only thing that we talk about. We don't talk about anything else other. Now, football is what butters your bread. Okay. And I get it. Yeah. But you got to worry about, so Joe, like you got to worry about sending women's tennis to Ohio State if you're Florida State. Like we don't think about that. Like if they were to go to the Big Ten, you got to send women's tennis to Columbus. So you're out of pocket sending them there.
I mean, that's one of the craziest things. There were some softball players that were out and publicly complaining about this. And
would you want to play softball in the cold when you're used to the heat?
Like this is a really shitty answer, but like tough. Like you're a college athlete. Like the thing that bugs me a little bit about some of this stuff, by the way, some people are
in the defense of them.
Uh-huh.
There are
I understand the discomfort. I get it.
Well, no, it's not discomfort. Joe, you got snow and cold in March where you got conference games that you're probably going to want to try to play, and you can't.
Yeah. One of the things that I don't really totally sympathize, though, is that you have some of these programs outside of football and then in football, some people are saying, oh, the long travel is going to be just so hard to deal with. I don't know about you, Blake. I don't know what the farthest game you travel to, but this happens at every low level
Kansas.
Division I.
Kansas.
Did you fly or did you drive?
Oh, we flew.
I had to do, and the conference I'm in has more money than the conference that you're in. The CAA is one of the most
Southland sucks.
It's one of the most, it's probably most lucrative FCS conferences. But my point here is that outside of the big conferences, a lot of these teams have to do these terrible bus rides instead of flying. If you're at a school like Rhode Island, like I was, we sat on a 10-hour bus ride. I had to sit next to an offensive lineman for 10 hours pressed up against a window on the way to Maine.
Sean Anderson like that.
It wasn't Sean. They put me up against somebody bigger than Sean. That my freshman year, that happened when I was the backup long snapper for the first half of the season. That is that's what happens. But my point is that other schools have way worse traveling conditions. Like if you're playing tennis or
it's not about the traveling conditions, it's about the playing portion. Is what they were trying to say. Like, Joe, have you ever played baseball on an ice field? That's what they're trying to say. Like, hey,
I had to play football in below freezing degree weather at Maine.
I get that. But what they're trying to say is, Joe, it is inhabitable.
I don't know, man. I feel like, look,
you
got to be able to adapt to conditions.
You playing on grass. They're playing on dirt. It is different. Why do you think that the what was it, the US Open or whatever, it's played on a clay court? They have to sometimes push it back, Joe. They get pushed back because the ice freezes on the clay and it's inhabitable because when it melts, you're in mud.
You know what, actually, look here, this is actually kind of an insane thought here. And this isn't going to happen. If these conferences want to be more effective in not making things difficult, they should travel multiple teams to a location at a time, and then they all play each other, and then they all leave.
Again, it's not about the travel.
But no, but like if you're talking about in those cold conditions, okay, we're gonna go play in
at
California. Yeah, we're all gonna go to we're gonna, not every single team, but like we're going to send but for the Big Ten sake, like, we're going to, for this part of the season, 4 or 5 teams are going to go play at USC and they're going to all play each other. And because that's actually how tennis often works, is that you, at the Division I level, is that usually there are groupings of teams that come and show up and play, and they all play each other and then they all leave because you have to do it that way. I think there are ways to make this work. And I think that a lot of times these teams are not looking at it that way.
Let me just say this. Let me tell you how it happens in baseball. You know what the Big Ten does for the first month and a half of their schedule?
What?
They play every game in the South.
Yeah,
they do. So that's what they're trying to say. It's like, Joe, if they can't play on their own field to start off with, why are you telling me now that I got to go there and play when they can't even play at their own field? That's the argument that they're trying to make. All right.
Yeah.
Last thing before we get out of here. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you everybody that's joining us. This is
the biggest. We have on YouTube. We have 140 people tuned in.
Well, it's not our biggest show because when we were doing it on AYS at one time, we had like 500 people in here.
Yeah.
But everybody subscribe, hit the notification bell, share. This will be our national coverage throughout the season. We will be covering college football throughout the season, multiple times a week, and maybe even daily, depending on how things work out with me, I think. All right.
Yeah.
Let's end here. Okay. We mentioned this a little bit, okay, about Sankey, but let's expand before we get out. Let's spend another 10 minutes on this. What do you think the SEC does?
I think they got to add somebody. And I know that, and this is as an outsider.
Add just one person. If they had to add 2, who do you think that they go after?
Clemson and Florida State. You already have Clemson has expressed displeasure, and Florida State is already actively seeking exterior outside opportunities. I just think that What's the SEC up at now? Now that they add
16.
Texas and Oklahoma, 16. The Big 12 is at 18, and the Big 10 is at 18.
Mm-hmm.
They're growing in size. I don't think either of those conferences are going to get any bigger. The SEC doesn't have to do shit. Like, let's be honest. But as my outsider perspective, as a non-typically SEC person, I don't think it hurts them to go and say, let's go add 2 other teams. And I also, the other layer to this, you don't have to go and add 2 big dogs. It doesn't have to be Clemson and Florida State. You theoretically could go with 2 middle tier ACC teams. I don't know what that looks like. They don't need to be extremely aggressive because they already have enough premier teams. It almost maybe might be a detriment to add more competitive teams. Just talking about sheer numbers, being competitive on that level.
You know what I think?
The quality is always going to be better, but sorry, go ahead.
Let me pull this up because I saw this by Saturday Down South, even though I don't like Saturday Down South that much. Mm-hmm. Let me pull this up. Okay. Look at this.
This is what that's a really big conference.
Let's just take some of these out. Okay. The SEC does not have a footprint in North Carolina. They do in South Carolina. Okay. I do think ultimately, though, they're not wrong here. Okay. I do think that this ultimately probably could be the next SEC. I do think they go get Oklahoma State. I do think that they go get Clemson. I do think that there's a potential they get Florida and Miami, but I do think ultimately when it's all
21 teams. Sorry, I'm cutting you off.
This is 24 teams.
Oh my God.
I do ultimately think this is where they go. Like I think, Joe, when me and you are old and wrinkly and 50, this is what the SEC may look like. Okay. Do I agree with this? No, not really. But This is, if we're being honest, this is basically the South. Now, Virginia Tech, Virginia is not really the South, right? They're not. But I did see this and say, you know what? This does make ultimate sense. The one team that they threw out of here that I thought was interesting, Missouri. There is no Missouri in here. Now, I'm going to tell you this. I don't think that they're going to cut out Missouri, okay? Yeah. Like, I really don't think that they will. But if they continue to expand more northern, I want chaos. I want Notre Dame and I want Florida State.
In the SEC.
In the SEC.
We both know for damn sure that that's not going to happen. We know that isn't going to happen.
I want Notre Dame, who thinks that they can run in the SEC.
All right.
Come on down here and think if you can play with the big boys. Come on, big dog.
All right. I see what this is. This is you found a way to make it full circle, take your shot at Notre Dame. This is one of the longest shows we've ever done, and you decided to find a way to take a shot at Notre Dame. Look, I think that Notre Dame would just be fine in a 24-team SEC. I think that they would be competitive. I will say this, though. I don't mind that we're shrinking the amount of conferences and we're kind of consolidating, but 24 teams per conference is too much.
Well, Joe, we're going there. What else are they going to do?
That's a good point.
If the ACC is dwindling, which
it hasn't yet. They haven't lost. The only conference hasn't moved.
Then what happens? Because if the ACC can pull off a Notre Dame, if they can pull off somebody, let me ask you this question. Does the ACC go to West Virginia and say, hey, why don't you come on in? Because geographically it makes more sense. Mm-hmm. I do think that they're going to expand. I do think that the ACC will do what they got to do. I don't think they'll go full Pac-12 here. I really don't think they'll go full Pac-12. I don't think that they'll dissolve because then the only way that happens, because I don't think the Big Ten goes more south. I don't think that they will do that.
No.
The only way that the ACC does not survive is if the SEC comes in and says, "Daddy's home."
Here is one thing I just want to throw in there.
Okay.
That I didn't even consider, and I don't think either of us have thought about. If Florida State leaves, they then have to pay this huge sum of money to leave. That actually gives the ACC capital to buy somebody else out of their own contract. So they actually could do like a total just straight up swap for somebody big, somebody in the Big 12.
So again, you came to the conclusion of what I was trying to say with Notre Dame.
Well, you don't have to buy out Notre Dame, but I know what you're.
But you can give them if you're getting $125 million. Stay with me. Stay with me. If you went to Notre Dame and said, "Listen, we're going to give you $50 million to join the ACC." By the way, they are trying to lock down a $75 million contract with NBC. It could work, buddy. It could work.
Here's one thing that I throw out there.
If Florida State leaves and Notre Dame's entered, the ACC wins. I think that, and I know that. They won. Yes. They win that battle. Okay. So as much as I may love Florida State, I love the war chant. Don't matter because you went because as a global brand, you go global with that. As much as I might not like Notre Dame, the truth is the truth.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, they're one of the few programs that you can say has a footprint in Ireland. Like they have fans that are legitimately in Ireland. Like that's
look at the Irish.
All right. My added thing though here, if I'm Notre Dame, I am not saying yes to this though, unless they actively try to pursue an additional big brand team though. Because
but like who is that big outside of Notre Dame? Who would be the big brand team? Like we keep saying that, but name them. Because there's no team in the SEC that's leaving. Notre Dame is literally the only team that the ACC can go after. Name the other.
Well, again, they could buy somebody out of the Big 12, but like I'm trying to think like who.
West Virginia is the only geographical team that would make sense.
That's not very sexy, but that's a possibility. But my whole point is I don't know who that would be. I can't sit here and say who I don't know who that would be. But if I was Notre Dame joining the ACC after Florida State leaves is you're then becoming Florida State. You're then becoming the guy who's carrying all the weight for the recognition of the conference. It becomes the Notre Dame conference. I'm going to go as far as to say that. It becomes the Notre Dame conference the minute that they join. They outweigh drastically the national footprint out of it's not even close. Regionally, yes, Miami, big fan base. Clemson, big fan base in the regional part. But nationally, Notre Dame has the biggest fan base. It's not even close. They should only make that pivot if there is an effort to bring in another team or try and keep Florida State. Like Notre Dame should not make that move to be the only good team.
If Notre Dame is given $50 million from the ACC, they should.
They shouldn't make their decision based off of money, though. Like they're
oh, really? The reason that they're not hold on. Okay. Calm down. If they're making their decision not joining the conference because of money.
Let's be honest with ourselves. Wait. Let's be honest with ourselves. That is part of it, but they remain independent off of pretension. And again, I'm a Notre Dame fan.
Your hoity-toity ass can join a conference.
But we can't deny that. And honestly, if fellow Notre Dame fans get upset that I'm being bluntly honest with how our fan base is and how our school is, it is in a sense of entitlement that we are our own thing. We belong as our own entity. They don't join a conference because of that solely. You know, they need more incentive than just money.
Notre Dame's brand is not as big as it thinks it is.
I disagree. Well, I think that it is outside of the South. It's a lot bigger. There's no presence as much in the South. That's
Kevin says, hell, at $125 million, the ACC can give Notre Dame even more than $50 million. That's crazy, and he's right. He's right. They could give him half.
That's a good point.
Because Joe, here's the truth: the point that I'm trying to make is I do think Notre Dame's a bigger brand than Florida State. And if Florida State were to leave, okay, then you get to a point where Notre Dame's the only team on the viable market. The only team. Because you can't go into maybe they can go into the Big Ten and pluck somebody. Maybe. But are you going to go pluck a Rutgers? And Rutgers ain't going to leave. They're making crap load of money in the Big Ten.
Yeah, they're just sitting pretty happy with getting some more primetime opportunities. It's so. I know we're probably going to wrap soon.
But here's
my final stray thought. Go ahead.
Well, here's the ultimate question. Hold on one second. Here's the ultimate question. Does the ACC call themselves the Coastal Conference and go get those stranded teams out in the pack?
It's a good. No, we're really starting to stretch ourselves thin.
Well, you're the one who said they were going to merge in the first place.
That was a joke. Wait, but it's you're half and half, and you've got divisions, and you're kind of like you don't really need to play each other that often. Now it's, you have to, those two really far teams have to come to the East Coast every single time that they want to play. The Magnificent Seven.
Oh God.
But my random stray thought that I wanted to throw in there, it's so goddamn funny that Rutgers is like just casually kind of, benefiting from all but they're benefiting. They're not nearly good as good academically. They're just casually benefiting from being terrible and not doing anything. As somebody from New Jersey, it's so funny to know this.
Wins national titles in baseball.
Rutgers isn't good at anything. They're just dicking around every single season.
You know what they are good for?
Sandwiches.
A good Sopranos heist.
All right, settle. Actually, you're also Italian. We can. Those comments are allowed. You get a nice deli sandwich somewhere near Rutgers. I'll tell you that much. It's a lot of good sandwiches.
Yeah, a bland sandwich from the Northeast. That's really what I want to eat today.
Stop! Don't put some respect. You haven't had an Italian sandwich from New Jersey. If you're gonna come on now. No. We can't debate this, Blake. Italian sandwiches, New Jersey,
and you're gonna you think that there's not an Italian family. And look at me, Joe. I have two uncles that live.
I'm not saying that there's. I'm not saying that there's not.
I have two uncles that lived in New York. They wear pinky rings, for crying out loud.
Just because they're Italian and they're from the East Coast does not.
They can cook. They can cook, brother.
I'm sure that they can. I'm sure that they can, but the Italian delis in New Jersey, in Nutley and Verona and Caldwell.
What's it called? Nutley?
Nutley? You've never heard of Nutley before?
Sounds like a sexual position.
All right.
Is that where we should leave it?
Yeah, that's a good note to wrap us up on. That was an awesome show, man. Longest we've ever done.
That's not true. We used to go 2 hours every Saturday morning for pregame shows. That is true. That is true. Nevertheless, we'll see y'all Monday. Peace.